Well, welcome to Law Talk, my friends, brought to you by the Falvello Law Firm. Remember that you get in touch with them at 570-788-4191 or go to their website, falvellolaw.com. A lot of great information we've been giving on these shows. And for those of you who have called, I'm going to answer some of, or hopefully Attorney Falvello will answer some of these questions. But my email is sam@ssptv.com. And you can certainly email me your questions, and some of them, in fact, we're going to cover almost 50% of the questions that came in. So, Mr. Conrad Falvello, how are you?
I'm good today, Sam. How are you?
I got a lot of nice comments on the 100 years, you know, as you talked about your family. I don't know if you received any comments, but
we did.
Yeah,
we did. It was very nice, and it makes you feel good that people recognize that. So yeah, we're pretty thrilled about that.
We're on Channel 92 on the weekends on the Wilkes-Barre channel, okay, and we're on from 7 to 11. So this young girl who is a senior, she's going to be graduating, hopefully. She's considering to go into law, all right, and she's got mixed emotions, and she said to me that Lexi is her role model. Okay, she watches her and she likes the way she presents herself, particularly when she saw the show with Lexi on. And so she's saying, could you, give her any words of encouragement? Because people have mixed emotions, she says, when I want to tell them I'm being a lawyer. There's too many lawyers out there, and, go out and get yourself a, this kind of job. But she just wants to go into law, and I guess she's looking for some words of encouragement. Do you have any?
Oh, sure. I think that, her question tells me that there's something in her that's drawing her to that profession, which is, I think, the way it is with a lot of people coming out of high school or going into college. It's just, for some reason that they may not know or understand, they say, well, I want to go into medicine, or I want to go into law, or I want to do, physical therapy or something like that. So that seed is there. And I would encourage her to follow it to wherever it takes her. From a practical standpoint, I know in my experience, one of the things that helped me quite a bit, and Alexis, because she did the same thing in high school and coming out of high school and college, is go work somewhere. Work. I worked in a factory. Alexis worked as a waitress in a restaurant, and get your feet on the ground, what I call get your feet on the ground, and learn how people are in the real world. And then you can begin to understand what they need, because personally, I don't think there's too many lawyers. In fact, in Hazleton, in this area, we've seen the number of lawyers dwindle quite a bit. So I think the need is there, and I think it's particularly beneficial right now for women who want to go into law, because I think there are, in fact, right now, more women in law school than men. So I think that's encouraging for her as well. And so I would encourage her to follow it, and I would have no problem if she wants to call us on the phone. I'd be happy to talk to her. I'm sure Alexis would. And, if you get into college, there may be, for example, the county may still have internship programs.
Yes, yeah.
And I would encourage her to do something like that.
One other, as she was talking, she was telling about the fact that she didn't know what aspect of law she wanted that she would be going into, So some of, either, like some cases, people would like to be corporate lawyers, regular lawyers, general lawyers or whatever,
Right.
So.
One of the I think great advantages of the legal profession is if you get your law degree, you have a lot of options, many options. Some get a law degree. I know at Penn State Dickinson, for example, law school, you can get a law degree and an MBA. That's a very valuable combination.
Oh, yes.
Very
Yeah,
valuable
yeah.
combination. You can also get a law degree and a tax degree. A lot of people don't know that, but if you're going to practice income tax law before the IRS, you have to be specially qualified and certified to do that. So you can get what they call an LLM and a law degree, and that's very valuable. But like you said, you could work corporate counsel, you could work for an insurance company, obviously you could work for a firm, you could what we call hang out your own shingle and do what we do and start your own legal business. So there's lots of options, and I think within that broad spectrum of what's available to lawyers in the profession, I would say she's bound to find something she'll like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the path she should follow.
So that's interesting. But you say, you hang your shingle out there. So what do you need a lawyer for?
Oh, wow. Well, that would be...
I mean, I know it's a broad... I mean, so... Because sometimes you say, do I need a lawyer for this? Do I need... One of the questions here is forming a business, but I want to get to the other question. But, I mean, like, why do I need a lawyer?
Well, let me give you a pretty straight example here. I mean, a lot of people use a lawyer to write a will. But under the law, you can write a will yourself. There are certain components that the will has to have in order to make it legal if you pass and the will is going to be filed or probated. But certainly you could write your own will. But what I've found over the years is when people come in and we talk about a will, the what ifs. Okay?
Yes, yeah.
You'll sit down and you'll start writing a will and they'll say, well, what if this or what if that? Or I want to give something to my son or my granddaughter, but what if I don't own it when I die? Okay? And those are kind of issues that we discuss. I'll give you a really common one. Husband and wife come in, they might have young children, maybe 7, 8 years old. And a lot of times we'll see them come in, they'll say, well, my husband travels a lot, he's on airplanes, we're concerned about accidents and something might happen. And we start walking them through what the consideration, and generally it's, husband leaves everything to wife, wife leaves everything to husband. If one of the parents or spouses should predecease, then on the second passing or the second death, the estate goes in equal shares to children. And what if question. I call it the Corvette question. The what if question is the parents will say, well, what if we're both gone and our children are only 12 and 10? Does that mean when they're 18 they can go out and buy a Corvette with what they're left? And I say, yep, that's it. And then that rolls over into, well, if a surviving child inherits and they're below a certain age, then the will provides for what we call a testamentary trust. And that means that the inheritance goes into a trust for that child. Generally, that trust is tied to the educational years, meaning once a child completes a high school or equivalent degree, then that trust can begin to distribute funds to that child at age 18, 19, whatever, for use in secondary education for a number of years. And then maybe when they reach 25 or sometimes even 30, they'll hold that trust in place and will not distribute the remaining principal of the trust to the surviving child until they're 25 or older.
Okay, so now, we have a will with you, and in fact, Debbie and I are thinking we have to come in and redo some things. I'm taking Sammy out of everything. I'm only kidding, Sam. No, what should people do, prepare for, what should they prepare before they come to you to, actually discuss the will?
Well, I think generally speaking, without getting into real specifics, you want to know what you have, meaning investment accounts, retirement accounts, real estate, mostly the majority, the great majority of folks own a home. And they always ask, what do we do with the house? And generally I tell them, if it's in husband and wife, keep it that way for now, particularly if the couple's in their 40s or even 50s, and maybe if they get in their 60s, maybe then they start thinking about something more like some type of estate plan, because they come in and, okay, maybe they're about to retire, their children are adults and out and working and independent. They may have a few grandchildren. It's okay, how do we manage our assets and what do we do? And all of that, Sam, is really individual. There's no what I call cookie cutter formula for that. And I think any lawyer that says, well, you should do this and you should do this and you should do this, I don't think you could paint with that broad of a brush. I believe that the lawyer has to sit down with the individuals, discuss where they are, what their desires are, what they want to do.
Okay, so not everybody has a will, of course, okay? And should everyone have a will?
I think most importantly, Sam, you should have a will if you have something specific that you want to make sure goes to a person or, for example, a charity. We call those specific bequests. Mm-hmm. And you can set those up. Some people set them up with a special account or a trust. But do you need a will? No, the law doesn't require that you have a will.
Okay, so let's assume you have a considerable amount of assets, and both of the husband and wife are killed in an accident. Okay, there's no will, and let's say there's 3 children involved. There are 3, one's over 21, maybe 18, maybe 12, or whatever. What happens?
Well, the assets in that case would pass very similar to, actually exactly the same as if the husband and wife had a will that gave their estates to each other, and if they did not survive each other, then to the children in equal shares. And that is governed by the Pennsylvania Probate Estate and Fiduciary Code that says, if you do not have a will, here's how your estate goes. Okay?
Oh.
And
so really
in that case, it would be to the children in equal shares.
Yeah. And is there taxes involved and stuff like that?
When assets transfer from a decedent to a child, yes, there is. There's inheritance tax.
Yeah. So there's ways of being able to put together a will to at least save some money with taxes?
You could. That would involve, in most cases, it would involve what we call joint property.
Okay.
And I've seen, let's say a husband passes, the wife survives, she has 2 children, she wants to stay in the home, but doesn't want to deed the home to the children. One of the things she can do, or one option that's available to her, is she can have a deed from herself to herself and her 2 children as joint tenants with right of survivorship. And let's say that's done and the mother passes. That means that property transfers to the 2 children by law. It doesn't pass through the estate. On her death, it now belongs to the 2 children. The difference that makes in terms of inheritance tax is, let's say the house is worth $150,000 at the time that the mother passes. If the mother owned that house by herself, $150,000 would be subject to inheritance tax, 4.5% to children. Being that she owned it with the 2 children at the time she passed, only 1/3 would be subject to inheritance tax. So just by that transfer, if it's timely done, that would save $4,500 on
Okay, a couple makes a will, all right, and they're in sound mind, and they're maybe in their 60s, and they left so much to Sammy, so much to Debbie, and so much to Connie, all right? And, they make that will, all right. Now, time goes on, and Sammy is not doing what he should be doing, and he's not really what I thought he was going to turn out to be, etc. And I don't think he should share in all of, he should get something, but not that way, okay?
Right.
Can I change the will?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's assume that you're in assisted living, all right? And let's assume that you made a will, okay, and you just don't have time to get to an attorney, so you write your own saying, on my will, I gave Sammy 1/3. I don't want him to have 1/3. I want him just to have this and this and this. Right. Notarize it and have someone sign it. Is that illegal?
Well, that would be called a codicil. And yes, you could make that change on your own. And I would suggest that it be exactly as you said. This is a change to my will of certain date. I want to change paragraph 4, whatever it is. You make the change, you sign at the bottom, and you have it notarized and witnessed, and it's good.
Next story is, here's a lady driving down the highway, and she stops. Someone comes through the red light, broadsides her. So what does? She needs a lawyer. And I'll tell you the story, what happened to this poor lady when we come back after the break. Welcome back to Law Talk, brought to you by the Falvello Law Firm. Remember, you can get them at 570-788-4191 or go to falvellolaw.com. For those of you who've called in questions, you could email me those questions at sam@ssptv.com, and the next show would be more than happy to talk to Connie about it. All right, Connie, another question came in. Now, this lady had me on the phone for about half an hour. I really felt bad for her. I couldn't help her. Stopped the light. Person comes flying through, broadsides her, okay? She's in bad shape, etc. So she calls one of these 800 numbers, I'll get you a lot of money, these kind of lawyers. I mean, the ads, and I'm not knocking them. I don't know why she wouldn't want to stick around. We have great lawyers here in northeastern Pennsylvania, Hazleton and Wilkes-Barre, great lawyers, okay?
Yeah, we do.
But anyway, the sad part is she went with them, and from the start, they asked questions, they did this and blah, 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 blah. Long story short was, it seemed to her that they were always quick to settle, and she didn't feel it was, she didn't want to settle because she didn't know what long-term illness she have, etc. And then they do a Band-Aid approach and come back, and then she said, I think I made a big mistake. What should I do?
Sam, it sounds like she hasn't settled. Is that correct?
Yes.
She has not.
Well, that was 2 months ago.
Okay. Well, let's assume that for now, that she hasn't settled. It also sounds like perhaps she never met the lawyer face to face.
Right.
It was always on the phone, or she talked to a lawyer and then maybe a paralegal.
Exactly.
And a lot of things were done by mail. And that's fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's not the way we approach things. When we get a call, we meet with the client. But to answer her question, can she change lawyers? The answer is yes, it is. She'd have to tell them that she no longer wants their services. She'd have to do that in writing. If she has talked to and maybe even engaged another lawyer to take the file, she would have to instruct that lawyer where to send the file. Now, the issue that would remain after transfer of the file was, did the previous lawyer have any costs that lawyer spent on her behalf to further the case? That lawyer would be entitled to those costs, and in some cases maybe even a fee, depending on what stage the case was in when it was transferred from the first lawyer to the second lawyer. So, but yes, she can transfer it.
Yeah. Well, she was quite upset about it, okay? Now, the other thing is POAs, okay? Financial health
Power of
care.
attorney.
Yeah, power of attorney, yeah.
Right.
Give me that information.
Well, we talked about wills a little bit ago on this show, and the way I describe it is a power of attorney is what I call a living document. It's enforceable and usable during the person's lifetime, but once they pass away, that power of attorney becomes automatically legally void. And what that means is, and I've had this question, where somebody passes, the power of attorney comes in to us, and they say, gee, I took this power of attorney to the bank with the death certificate, and we try to close out the bank account, and they wouldn't let us do it. And I tell them, well, that's because you need a will. You need to be, somebody needs to be appointed executor of the deceased person in order to be that person's legal representative on their death.
Okay, so the person that you are a power of attorney should have a will.
Correct.
Okay, so if you pass and say, look, here's the will that person made out.
That's right. And here's the difference, though, Sam. If I make a power of attorney and you're my, they call it agent, you're my agent, and you have the paper, if it is a general power of attorney, you can go into a bank and present it to the bank, and if it passes muster with their legal department, you can deposit money in my accounts, you can take money out of my accounts. You can pay my bills, you can do my insurance business if it's a very broad general power of attorney.
Would that power of attorney be liable for the bills that person made?
No.
Okay.
No.
In other words, that person could have a lot of bills, but, you know, even though you're power of attorney, they can't come after the person in power of attorney.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. You are only the power of attorney. That means you have legal authority to do the business of that person. By the same time, Sam, the power of attorney says you must, as the agent, conduct that person's business as if you were that person.
Right.
You cannot say, well, I would do this or I would do that. That's not permitted, and you can be held accountable for that.
Okay, now the person goes into dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, doesn't know what happened,
Right.
and now you still have to, you're still power of attorney, you have to pay the bills, etc., but now they can't have any input because they're not with it. What happens in that case?
Well, that's a, if you will, a classic reason for the need of a power of attorney. Because if a person has dementia, particularly severe dementia, it may be that they don't have the mental capacity or understanding to make a power of attorney once they have dementia. Same thing with a will, okay? And so it's good to have that document, particularly the power of attorney, because then if somebody is suffering from dementia and they're not capable of conducting their own business, then the only option would be to go to court and get a guardian appointed.
Another question is, you know, we don't like to think about those things, especially me, but the point is, you know, these are real things that happen in life,
Yes.
and you have to address them, okay, and, you know, they're not the greatest things you like to do. But in terms of, excuse me, a power of attorney, when do you think a person should consider having someone, if they're in sound mind, you know, but they're not functioning properly, so they need to have someone? When do you think that's a time?
That's a very difficult question to answer because it goes back to the person's individual circumstance. Certainly you cannot handicap or predict when a catastrophic event is going to happen, like a sudden, very severe illness or a very catastrophic fall or a catastrophic accident where the person cannot, after that happens, understand a power of attorney or a will. And in that case, then your only option would be to go to court for a guardianship. But I think really any time would be appropriate for a power of attorney. And you can make a power of attorney contingent on somebody's incapacity.
Okay. Very quickly, what do you think about a long-term care insurance?
I would say be careful. Because number one, I've dealt with insurance companies my whole career, and quite frankly, in many instances, a lot of insurance companies out there are not reputable, and they're in the money business and not the insurance business. But I can tell you from knowledge from people that I know who got long-term care insurance, once you or a loved one has the need for it, trying to collect on it can be very difficult. There's a lot of firewalls or conditions that have to be met in order for them to even consider payment. For example, could be a 90-day or even a 180-day waiting period. Or if you're in a hospital, you get out and get back in, or you're in assisted living, out and back in,
So
that can discontinue the coverage.
what do you advise for people who have long-term insurance right now?
Make sure you know what you're buying.
What about-
And I wouldn't buy any of that online.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I would sit
So
down.
know what you
I
should
would sit
check
down with an agent
Yeah.
and say, explain it to me,
Okay.
and make sure you understand the policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Time goes by fast when you're getting free legal advice.
It does.
It's, hey, listen, folks, we just got half an hour of free legal advice. That's fantastic. But anyway, there's a lot more questions that come in. It's amazing. But we're here to answer them. He is here to answer them, and Alexi will hopefully be at the next show. It's falvellolaw.com. It's 570-788-4191. Congratulations again, 100 years, and see you next time.